What was your favorite movie as a child? Was it Spirit, Balto, All Dogs Go to Heaven, or maybe one of the Disney classics? All of these films were created using traditional animation. You may have wondered how these films were made. Today, I would like to demonstrate the process for creating traditional animation. The first step to animating something is having an idea of what to animate. If you're going to create a character loosely based off of another character, make sure that you have a reference to look off of. For this animation, I will be using a reference from a drawing I made when I was younger, though adaptations will be made so that it will be easier to animate. First, draw a rough sketch of it, just to get the base idea of what you want to do. And then secondly, you will go through and make a final idea. Today, I will be using the reference from the Balto movie, the first one. I know that it is a reliable animation because I've used it before as a reference. We will be making an 11-frame run cycle, meaning when you play it back, it loops, and it's a continuous movement. Next, you will need to gather your materials. First, you will need paper to draw out your character. Then, later, when it comes to animating, you will need pencils, paint, Sharpies, and possibly an Expo if you want to erase your Sharpie marks. The first true step of animating is the rough sketches. It's not pretty, but it does give you form and allows you to understand the placement. To see through to the other frames, many animators use light tables. In this tutorial, I will be using a light table so that I can see through to my other frames. Once the initial sketch is done, trace it in a different color so that you can understand the form of it. The hardest of all the frames in our sequence will be the 11th frame. This is because it has to fit perfectly between the 10th and the 1st frame so that you can transition well between the beginning and the ending of the sequence. Make sure to number your frames. That'll make sure that they don't get out of order. Now that your rough sketch is done, you may add props. Props help to tell the story of the character. For example, my wolf has a sickle or a scythe. Make sure to use a good reference when animating this, because these things are easy to make exaggerated in proportion in size. Make sure to check your work once done. Now that this process is complete, you may move on to transferring. What you do is you lay a clear sheet of litmus paper on top of your rough draft and trace it using a Sharpie. Do this for all 11 frames. The most time-consuming part of the process is the next piece. That would be painting the cells. Make sure you know the colors you want and make sure that they are in abundance. Also, make sure that you know how to mix them if the colors are mixed. Apply the paint evenly across the entire frame. Make sure that there are no holes in which you can see through the back. Also, make sure to keep your brushes clean because a dirty brush is no good for animation. When holes arise, patch them with another layer of paint of the same color. Please make sure to change out your water if it gets as gross as this, because dirty water also doesn't make for good animation. Do this for all 11 frames. The next part of the process will be making the background. For this part, you will need a large sheet of white paper. To make people believe that the paper is never ending, you must fold both far ends on top of one another. Then, when you go into color, continue the lines completely over the edge of the paper. This will give the illusion of a completely looping picture. Be prepared for lots and lots and lots of coloring. Also, another thing to note is that a more diverse background will make for a more compelling scene. Be sure to measure all of the frames so that you know exactly how wide the gate is of your character. That way, the looping background will be long enough to encompass the entire project. Knowing where your frames line up on the background will certainly help in the process. Make sure to move the background paper exactly 1 inch to the right every time so that the frame will fit onto it. Take many pictures. Once this process is complete, you will now upload all of your photographs into Movie Maker or some other video program. Now, after doing so, you will time all the frames around 0.07 frames per second. This will allow for you to completely understand every frame and how it's connected. Until you're sure exactly how fast you want it to be, I would say to allow it to be between a fifth of a hundredth of a second and about a 1/15 of a second. And lastly, enjoy your video.